Det, der kører hen over skærmen lige nu, det er thumbnails fra 2nacheki. 2nacheki er en af Afrikas største YouTube-kanaler. Du kan eventuelt trykke på pause for at få lidt en idé om emnerne og vinklen og den generelle stil, som den her YouTube-kanal bruger. Jeg kom i kontakt med personen, der har startet den her YouTube-kanal. Han hedder Omare, han kommer fra Kenya. Jeg vil gerne sætte mig ind i, hvad hans mål for sådan en kanal er, og spørge ind til, hvorfor han har startet den her nu så indflydelsesrige kanal. Hvad er hans mål? Jeg spørger mig selv, om han er repræsentativ for en ny panafrikansk bevidsthed, eller er han blot én stemme? Jeg vil også gerne spørge, hvordan han ser verden. Og der er jo stor forskel på de her forskellige thumbnails, men der er lidt et gennemgående tema. Det er, at der er en ny verden på vej. Og at den gamle verden, det var den, der var styret af vestens imperialistiske lande. Og alle de her ting, dem vil jeg gerne tale med ham om. Så jeg håber, I vil nyde den her samtale med Omare fra 2nacheki. Welcome to this talk with Omare. We want to talk about what's going on in Africa, and we've invited Michael here from 2nacheki, and we're very happy to have him on board. Thank you for coming, Michael.
Thank you for having me.
So Michael is a leading voice in Pan-African activism. He's half Kenyan, half Tanzanian, and he's renowned for his knowledge in various fields, including Pan-African news and political analysis and technological developments. And he's also collaborated with the United Nations and something called Corporate Kenya. And he also has a very popular social media platform called 2nacheki. It means Africa is watching. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And he has amassed a dedicated following of over 1.5 million people and billions of online views. Could you, Michael, tell me a bit about your background, your channel, and what are your goals with doing analysis of African development?
So maybe I can just start off with why I even decided to start an African channel in the first place. So I used to work for the United Nations doing communications work, and which I was really good at. My job is to get information, data, use the data to make applications that would achieve a certain goal, right? So while I was doing that, like we used to do like heavy analysis, all the information we used to pull on Africa used to be mostly negative. If it's an article on CNN, if it's an article on BBC, like the usual cliche news articles about Africa, starving children, wars, floods, as if only all those things exclusively happened in one place, right? Like just in one continent. Yeah. So saying this, like it was almost. How can I give you? If you Google Africa on the first page of back then in 2016, if you Google Africa in the first page of Google, negative, you'd have to go till page 20 until maybe you'd find positive news on Africa. The same for YouTube. Long ago, if you just Google Africa, just terrible news, you really have to look to find good news about Africa. So I set out to change this narrative, this perception by saying, hey, Africa, like I know bad things happened in the world, but this is just not what 100% happens in Africa. So I went out to try to change the narrative by informing people about Africa. So I didn't renew my contract in the United Nations, went into YouTube and just started making just videos like top 10 African countries with the best roads, top 10 most developed African countries, just things that start informing people, like even Africans, especially Africans in the diaspora and on the continent, about other African countries, right? Because based on how divide and conquer works, the more people know about each other, the more they inform there. So yeah, that's how 2nacheki started.
Okay, wow. So do you feel that can you feel that your work is making connections between countries that weren't, or people that weren't connected before in Africa?
Definitely. So, like I give you an example. The first thing you Google about Africa, but in 2016 it was negative news on YouTube, negative news. So these days things have changed. Maybe these days have changed the algorithm. But when you Google things on Africa, it's usually like a mix, like some good, like on the front page, some bad. The same on YouTube, some good, some bad, and. But in 2016, I was the only one doing this, like exclusively making Pan-African content. These days, there are thousands and thousands of creators from different African countries, from the diaspora, doing what I've done. So I really feel in 2024, we've made progress on the original goal of changing the perception and also connecting other Africans to talk about their countries and inform each other on what's actually going on in the ground. Right.
Okay. And so it's called Africa's Watching, or that's kind of the tagline.
Yeah.
And then you have this picture of it's a camera, and it's pointed right at us.
Yes.
And in a way, it's kind of scary, right? Because it's saying we see what's going on. So what is Africa seeing, or what are you seeing? Yeah, I know this is a very big picture, but what is kind of going on if we look at the last 20 or 10 years? How is it developing socially and politically in Africa?
So what's going on in Africa is rapidly developing at a higher curve than historically other developed countries, right? The way Africa is growing, it's rising more akin to China. You know, the way in 20 years, China just went from a developing country to a first world country, right? In just a little span. So Africa is growing at the same rate. But based on the outlook of how the world sees Africa, they are really trying hard to keep the status quo. They want Africa's image to remain the same. The needy continent, the dark continent, the continent that always needs aid, you know, right? So that's what Africa is saying is how the rest of the wider world is treating us. It's looking at us with the same lenses as us. We're looking at them with different lenses.
And these medias, we've talked about them, that are painting these pictures. Can we define what do you see as the mainstream media? What are the big media?
So back then in the 90s, at least there was a distinction between the mainstream media and the corporate media. But since the popularization of social media, these people just combined. You know, they're like, hey, we can't beat social media, so they've come together. And right now we just have corporate media, where if you are the BBC, if you are the CNN, if you are the France 24, all these other ones, they mostly care about what their investors want, what the bottom line is. It has very little to do with news, as the mode of operation is not informing the people. It's capitalism, right? It's making a profit, right? If CNN is not making a cut, reporters are fired. Like, it's more of a business rather than journalism, right? You know, journalism is about the story first, then the business later. But with corporate media, it's more about the business first, right? If there's a scandal in Microsoft, but Microsoft is one of your investors, of course, corporate media wouldn't cover that scandal. So that's how media has evolved from the 90s. And with that is, if it serves the interest of corporate media to have this perspective about Africa, they'll keep it. And that's how, as Africans, we see how media treats us more. It's like a business. Who at the end, who has to profit at the end, and not about news or information or journalism or investigations. Yeah.
Okay. And for example, in in Kenya, where you are, is what type of media do the people get? I'm guessing you have local media, but do you also have international media and the TV, or what do people watch?
So for us, we are unfortunately fed mainstream media, international media, together with our local media, which always parrots what the international media says. It's not an independent voice in local media. Whatever Reuters is reporting, it's exactly what we parrot, right? Like it's hilarious. The local media is in the country, right? But if Reuters tells them 500 people died in this fire or event, right? Like the local media wouldn't go to the actual location and confirm with the local police or the local Red Cross. They'll just take exactly what another entity in another country is telling them. That's how bad it is for local media. And this is local media for the whole of Africa. When I mean local media, I mean traditional media, TVs, satellites, right? They just parrot exactly what is given to them by Reuters, and is given to these media news agencies. Yeah. So that's the current situation in the whole of Africa.
And are people waking up to this, or like if this is how do people, because people can see what's going on? So if they get one news from Reuters, but they can see something else on the ground, well, what happens? Yeah.
So back then, like you see, it's very easy to deceive somebody when their eyes are closed, right? You can tell them, hey, it's daylight and it's at night. It's very easy if they're blindfolded. But with the social media, with the onset of social media, right? Somebody goes on Twitter and says, hey, no, only 150 people died. I live in that area, right? I talk to. So there's this citizen journalism that's currently happening, and something you would know about Kenya. Out of every country in the world, Kenyans are known for being the kings of Twitter. It's even a huge group called Kenyans on Twitter, when X was called Twitter, right? So if there's anything like some fake news or disparaging news about Kenya that the Western media does, a whole army, you know what I mean? Army, like tens of thousands of Kenyans on Twitter, go to those pages. They they spam them. They set the record straight, right? And this is all citizen journalism, right? So Kenyans are known for being very ferocious about protecting the image through the help of social media, right? So with the onset of social media right now, local media is really becoming like a vestigial organ, right? If you want to know what's going on, right, you go to local media. But if you want to know the truth, you double check on social media, right? So that's how it's the current operation of how things function in the country, Kenya, and the rest of Africa right now.
Okay, so social media has a great power to inform, but it also has power to misinform sometimes. And
definitely.
Yeah. And just the thought that comes up here is, what if Elon Musk, we're talking about Twitter or X or whoever, if it's Google or if it's Meta, if they at some point in the future decide we don't like your narrative, or we don't, if it becomes politicized and they start taking control, is there a African social media platform, or is this something people are working on? Or?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. Because whatever you said, if Google decides to do this, if this social media, they already decided last year in 2023, Google, Reuters, and I think five other mainstream media news organizations came up with this agreement. They set up an agreement to tackle fake news, right? Like that was the whole concept, where they're going to say they're going to start censoring things they deem not to be it's called real news, or things deemed to be misinformation or disinformation, right? So they did that agreement and now they're implementing it, right? But with something like that, as you said, fake news is bad, right? Fake news is dangerous, can cause deaths, can cause injuries, can, cause coups. But now it seems that they are overextending this power, where fake news or misinformation or disinformation these days is equals to things that they don't want to hear, right? So it's such a thin line. It's like if you don't want to hear what other people are saying, it's so easy to put it in the umbrella of fake news, disinformation, propaganda. And because this organization, Google, with the rest of this mainstream media, made that agreement, I think legally they're covered to do what they're saying. They're like, hey, it's fake news. So yeah, that's it happened last year. And right now, I've been doing some research. So many creators from Africa, Europe, America are getting banned from YouTube, from Facebook, from TikTok for this exact thing. If you're critical, like I'll give you an example. These days, if you're critical at Ukraine, you know this huge channel. I used to follow them. It's called DD News, right?
What was it called? Sorry.
DD News. DD News.
DD News. Okay, no, I don't know.
Democracy. Yeah, like I think it was Democracy something news. They got banned last week from YouTube. Yeah, just because of their saying. I'm sure you've heard of Africa Streams, right?
Yeah. Yes, I've heard about it. Yes.
Yeah. They got banned, and there's so many others. These ones are known because they were huge channels, but there's so many other small creators that are getting banned under the guise of disinformation. And there's a current purge currently going on.
There's a purge going on right now.
Yeah, currently. So many creators are getting banned. And it's ironic that it's just a certain type of creator who talks about a certain type of topic, right? So something that's an unpopular opinion to these organizations, mainstream media, like a good example, Gaza, like for me, I like to call it genocide, right? Because Gaza genocide that's happening, you're banned, you are scrutinized, your channel doesn't get as much views as you want. The coups in the Sahel, the same, and also Ukraine-Russia war, the same. So there's that line that if you cross, your channel is at risk. And as you ask me if in Africa there are local social media platforms, and the answer is sadly no. The social media has been monopolized by these Silicon Valley companies. And other than, I think Telegram, which is I think Telegram is currently Russian owned, as in the founder is Russian, but I don't know where it's registered. I think other than Telegram, I don't see any other social media platform that you can say is independent.
So that would actually be, it would be amazing if there was a Pan-African social media platform at some point.
Yes. That would be
because then you can have these discussions. And right now, it seems from what you're telling me, if it's true, that it's very it's like your conversations are kind of controlled. So either it's Western controlled, or maybe their enemies want to control it. I don't know. But mostly, I guess, with the history, has it been the Western powers using the influence?
Definitely. And for me, I can't complain. You can't go to somebody's house and start complaining when they refuse to give you a glass of water. It's their house. It's called house rules, right?
Yeah.
It's called house rules. Like if you're in somebody's house, you follow the instructions. And if they say, hey, we don't hear any negative news about Ukraine, if you put negative news about Ukraine, you're out. If they kick you out, I think it should be shame on us, because it's their platform. So as you said, the only solution for that is for Africans to have their own grassroots, ingrown platforms, right? And I don't mean one big one, because there's always a danger in that. Like look at TikTok, right? I'd rather have 50 small social medias in Africa rather than one big one, which might be easy. If you're huge, it's easy to attack you. See what's going on in TikTok and in the United States. They refuse to censor some news about Gaza. The business in the United States.
Or maybe there was now I'm getting an idea, Michael. Maybe it would be like you have a lot of small ones, but then you have a big channel that they send it to. I don't know, but this is okay. So I've been looking at 2nacheki, and your page has some pretty spicy thumbnails. How do you balance getting attention and being informative?
Definitely. So that one has two answers. So the first answer is how can I say, the culture that we live in, sex sells. Sex is marketed, right? So the more controversial or sexy a thumbnail is, most likely people would tend to click on that, right? And the content would be also entertaining to them. So because our goal was to attract people from their 20s to 50s, we went with that approach to attract the masses. That's why we've grown to like over 1.5 million subscribers, right? It's easy to attract people, right? Because people come for the eye candy, but they stay for the information, right? Because somebody will watch one of your videos, we do maybe. We tend to do these videos that grab people's attention. It's like a good example is we did this video, top 10 African countries to find a wife, right? I'm sure so many single European men would want to watch that video, right? But in that video, we just don't say, hey, South Africa has hot chicks. What we go like, hey, South Africa, a country with a GDP of what, and its main economies are this and this. The population, the ratio of men to women are this and this. So while them looking for the hot women, they get information about you get, and then slowly that's how you create interest. So most of our videos were like that, right? Before you start somebody, unfortunately these topics for geopolitical news, political analysis, they're not sexy, they don't flow out of the mouth nicely, right? So you really have to have the interest to go to 2nacheki to get a video about, let's say, top 10 countries with the best GDPs, right? You really have to be an economist or somebody interested in that, right? But we found a way of informing people of that information through using different topics. And that's the first reason. And then also, the other reason is that there's a kind of double standard when it comes to YouTube, right? So let me give you a good example. So Western culture, and when I mean Western culture, this is not more so in Europe, this is more so in America, right? They tend to heavily link sexualization and entertainment together, right? Yeah. So that's so much linked together. So as we can do a video on, let's say we were doing a video on Zulu women, right? There's this initiation where if they are moving from adolescents to adults, they parade around the streets and they are all topless in their traditional cultural clothes, right? Yeah. So we had this problem where YouTube would tend to demonetize or remove our videos, right? Where something like a Nicki Minaj video, where it's practically over sexualized, that one flies, that one gets monetized, right? Which and in most African cultures, women are not sexualized that way, right? I'll give you a good example. In most African culture, when somebody sees breasts, right, they link it more to parenthood, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But in Western culture, when somebody sees breasts, they link it more to pornography, right?
I think you're right.
So yeah. So you see, in Africa, you can see a topless woman and be like she's a mother, right? Because breasts are for feeding the baby, right? If you see a topless woman in the United States, she's a porn star, right? Because That's what they do. Yeah. So with that distinction, YouTube started looking at our African channel, our African content in the lens of the Western image, and started removing our videos. We had so many videos removed, and until we started a campaign and protest in South Africa. And these days, they don't remove our videos, right? For in South African culture, but they still don't monetize it. So, but at least we want something. Before, they just used to delete, remove, not even put the 18 tag on it, right? Just remove. And we're just talking about a good example is in Namibia, Angola. There's a tribe called the Himba women, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So in the Himba women, that they live in the deserts of the Namib. They're topless. They cover their whole body with red paint, right? So the first version of that video, we had to take hours and hours censoring every breast and nipple in that video. You get, yeah. And our goal is we're not sexualizing this women. We're just telling the stories as is.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why our videos tend to be like that. For a Western audience, it may be spicy, spicy, sexualized, but to us, it's just normal life.
That makes sense. But when I also think so with the thumbnail, sometimes it's also with the political content. It's also it's also polarized.
Yes.
You know, you put in some pretty okay.
That one is so. When I was growing up, the best part of the newspaper was the satirical political cartoons, right? I'm sure they're in every newspapers. There's always a satirical, there's a good one. There's this controversial one for this French magazine called Le Monde, right? So they always do controversial cartoons, right? So when we were making thumbnails, especially for political videos, I tend to channel that. I go hey, if somebody would do a funny political cartoon on this thumbnail, how will it be? That's why we usually have the call-out sign and the funny or controversial things the same. So we tend to because that art is dying. People no longer buy newspapers, right? Even in digital newspapers, they remove them. They don't have that column. So yeah, because I personally love that about the newspaper. Because as a kid, there's very few things you can read in a complicated newspaper, but I used to like the cartoons. So yeah, so I'm just visualizing that, and apparently it works because in most of the comments people go the thumbnail got me here, because it's technically what people are thinking of the situation, right? In more visualization rather than words. Yeah. So that's why, and I like it because I've seen so many other creators starting to copy us, which is always you're doing something good if people start copying you.
Yeah. But when I talk to you, it feels like you have many perspectives and you've thought about things. So it's always because when I see the thumbnails, I can be like, oh my, okay, who am I meeting here? It's very interesting. It's a very good, and it's really worked. I can see. So yeah, okay, that's where that comes. Thank you very much. I'd like to go on because a lot of your videos have been about some of the things going on here with Burkina Faso and Mali and Niger, and they have broken from something called Ecowas, and there are also been coups in these countries, and now you have Traoré in Burkina Faso. People don't know what to think about him in the West, and so. A couple of things. What is Ecowas, and what are these coups? Can you give us a picture of what is going on from your perspective?
Okay. So for let me just give you a quick background. So Africa is a huge continent, right? The whole of Europe, the whole of the United States, the whole of China can fit in Africa with space to spare, right? Africa is huge. Most people usually don't realize it, but it's so huge, right? We have 54 countries in Africa, or 55 countries based on who you ask. So those countries are usually put in regions, right? So the East African region is called the EAC, East African Community. The West African region is called ECOWAS, right? So these ones are more more economic blocks, where these regions they tend to trade with each other, like for free. Travel is mostly like passportless, like ease of travel. So it's more of a preemptive idea of how people wish for Africa to be in the future. We are all, as in they're like a passportless, borderless Africa, right? So currently there are like there are 8 regions. There's SADC in South Africa. There's AMU in North Africa, right? So there's so many, as I said, the 8 regions. There's COMESA that goes from North Africa till South Africa, right? Yeah. So COMESA enables Kenya to get grapes from Egypt, tariff-free, cars from South Africa, tariff-free, right? So there's so many of these regional blocks in Africa. So ECOWAS was the East African bloc, and because, you know, Nigeria is such a huge powerhouse economically, it was like it's considered to be the biggest bloc, like economically, right? So ECOWAS has so many countries. I think it has 18 countries, including, as you said, Niger. Like before, it had Niger, it had Mali, and it had Burkina Faso, right? Yeah. So these countries are also part of another region called Francophone Africa. So Francophone Africa are countries that got colonized by France, right? So Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Benin, Guinea-Bissau, Cameroon, Ivory Coast, right? All those countries were colonized by France, right? And based on that, based on how France colonized them, like it didn't let go once they got independence, right? So till today, other than, as I said, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, right? All those countries I've mentioned still in part of the Francophone Africa are still paying some sort of tax to France, right? All their money in their central banks are stored in France. All their money, their currencies are printed in France, right? So there's this kind of new colonization, and things like mineral rights, mining, all the rights would first go to French companies, right? At peanuts. So if there's an American company or an Australian mining company that wants to go to Niger to mine uranium, they tell the government, hey, we'll give you 70% of the income, right? Because France has first right, right? Because France has the first right, it goes to the Niger government and says, no, you're going to give us the rights, and we're going to give you 5% of the revenue. And there's nothing they can do, because in the colonial agreements, it's like that. France has first right for minerals in those countries, right? So regardless, when if Rio Tinto comes with the best offer ever to mine uranium in Niger, now France goes like, nope, stick with our 3%, right? So yeah. So that was the current situation. Let's start with Niger, because all these coups happened organically, right? Before the coup in Niger was the second poorest country in the world, right? But also Niger is among the top 10 largest producers of uranium. Like in the country, I think it's the top 3 country that has the most uranium stockpiles, right? And you know, uranium is, as in it's highly valuable and highly coveted, right? And for Western countries like Europe and America, the only other uranium that's easily available is in Russia and is in China. You know, those are really not friendly places to get things that you might use to, you might use on them, right? Yeah. So, a country like Niger is like easy picking. It's like, as in, if you keep it on your side, you have cheap uranium for the foreseeable future, right? So the Niger people were starving. There were so many insurgencies, so many terrorist attacks, right? Which was all because of the collapse of Libya, right? This is another story, right? Libya collapsed, all the terrorists, Al-Qaeda, ISIS went and devastated the Sahel. So the Niger people, they're starving. Their politicians are rich because they get a cut of these minerals, right? the president and the people in power, right? They're millionaires. They've got chateaus in Paris. They've got Porsches in Paris, right? They're rich people. These politicians in Niger. So just things boiled over, and through popular protest, the military saw a chance, right? This coup wasn't planned by the military. There's just so much chaos, right? A good example is Haiti. See how Haiti, there's so much chaos, but now there's gang violence instead of somebody rising up to take power. So the military, to stop chaos, they took power, and that's how the coup in Niger happened. The same way for Burkina Faso, right? But for Burkina Faso, it's a bit different because Burkina Faso has always had a disgruntled relationship with Paris since they assassinated their president, right? So there's always been that animosity. So they took the chance, and they also had a coup. The same way for Mali, right? Mali, it was mostly because of Western power supporting. Like Mali is also a very huge country, right? Like I think most of Western Europe can fit in Mali, right? Mali is huge, like so huge, but majority of it is the Sahara Desert, right? But the north part of Mali, where like wanted to be, to separate, so they attacked the south, right? Destroyed iconic things like the Timbuktu and like historical sites, but then it's like the coup happened because they just thought that this insurgency was being funded by somebody else, right? Yeah. So the president also got deposed many times. I think Mali had so many coups. I think like 3 coups in a row, right? Yeah, because people were like to still like unresolved. Like the reason for the coup wasn't as clear as the other countries. Yeah. So these countries formed a union together with Guinea-Bissau, but Guinea-Bissau is enjoying. They formed a union called the Sahel Union, AES. It's in French. I don't know French, but they call it the AES. And together they decided to leave Ecowas, right? Because Ecowas is part of the problem. We've gone to Ecowas so many times complaining about these unfair trade deals. They've not helped us. Apparently, they've been gaining. They've been gaining, right? We've gone to Ecowas for this. Ecowas is wanted to send a regional force to these countries to restore democracy by force, right? Mm-hmm. Like in the irony, restoring democracy by force, yeah, which is ironic, right? Yeah. So they built that animosity because they wanted to use French forces to come in and do that. And as a retaliation, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger kicked out the French troops that were there, which were like 10,000. They kicked out the American troops who were there, which was like, I think, a couple, like 2,000. They kicked out the German troops who were there, right? So, they're kind of like closing one door, for the Western power. Then in the same time, they started using Wagner to fill the spots where these militaries were, because they were there in the guise of preventing terrorism. But there were still so many terrorist attacks, right? Yeah. So they brought in Wagner. As you know, Wagner, the drama that happened with Wagner, right, got absorbed in the Russian military, I think, right?
Yeah.
But now Russia is officially in those countries, and they're opening trade agreements, they're opening like military pacts, energy pacts, right? Like those countries, especially Niger, they're in talks with Roscom. Roscom is Russia's nuclear like a manufacturer. So they're in talk with Roscom to come to Niger and set up a uranium refining plant and also set up a nuclear power plant in Niger, right? And this, I think last I checked is Niger has sent its students and technicians to Russia to learn how the process works, right? Because they want it to be run in Niger. So Russia is opening doors. And like to go back to the minerals, because that's why France wanted these countries, right? Burkina Faso's president, Traore, started canceling these crazy lunatic deals, right? Yeah, he started nationalizing mines. Last I checked in the news, he's nationalized 3 mines, right? Yeah, 3 gold mines, and currently he's talking about canceling all mineral rights for every company, to nationalize every mineral in the country, right? And moves like that are the moves that call you the West, make you Western governments to start calling you a dictator. You get, right? When you start making moves that are meant to help the people and not the multinationals and not the countries, that's when things tend to be, you tend to be called a dictator. A good example for me, I'm 38 years old, right? Cameroon has a president called Paul Biya, who currently he might be dead or he might not be dead. He's in hospital in France, going treatment. But news came out yesterday that he died in France, right? He's been president of Cameroon for 43 years, and he's the darling of from Chirac to Macron to Sarkozy. He's been friends, as in they love him because he just lets France come and basically proxy rule Cameroon, right? So for somebody like Paul Biya, you'll never read in the news he's a dictator. He's used violence to suppress the people. He's made mockery of democracy. All elections he's been part of have been rigged, right? You can imagine he's been president for almost half a century, right? But somebody like that in mainstream media, you can never hear people talk about that. Another president is Yoweri Museveni from Uganda. He's been president for more than 38 years, right? But the Americans love him because of course, everything I say when it comes to these political relationships, it's my opinion, and it's not like that. But there's a rumor that Yoweri Museveni is helping the US and these multinational companies like Apple, Dell, Microsoft loot DR Congo, right? Because DR Congo is the most blessed country when it comes to coltan, gold, lithium, cobalt, right? All the things you need to make a smartphone, all the things you need to make an electric car, all the things you need to run the modern industry, right? DR Congo has all those minerals, and together with France, the United States, the UAE, they are all looting DR Congo, and they use countries like Uganda, they use countries like Rwanda to loot these mines, right? And that's why you've had so much in the news about DR Congo. There's a genocide happening in DR Congo, right? There's so many wars. There are so many militias being funded by like Rwanda, being funded by Uganda. Yeah, so that's how the political situation in these countries are. And for the Sahel, for me, I commend them because they started actually doing something instead of just complaining. Because people in DR Congo, they'll complain, oh, we're being looted. People in these other countries, they'll complain. But those 3 countries, in Guinea-Bissau, they've started to take matters in their own hands and try to make change.
Wow, thank you. That's a beautiful picture you're painting here. So there's so many questions I have right now, but I want to ask, so in the beginning when you told me about Ecowas and you told me about how the different blocks have kind of the trading unions.
Yes.
And when you told it then, it sounded a bit good.
Yeah,
but it seems like there's also a dark side when you're talking about ECOWAS right now.
Yeah, yes.
So can we? Well, what are the good things and what are the bad things about these?
So let me start with the good things first. So with these regional blocks, it's like a vision of how Africa will one day become united and become a united Africa, right? Because it's very hard uniting. It's very hard uniting 54 individual states. It's easier uniting 5 blocks together, right? You know, 5 is easier than 50, right? Yeah. So we are like with these blocks, the East African bloc, SADC, Ecowas. It's to make things, especially trading, improve internal trade. And these blocks led to something very important that was established in 2018, right?
Yeah.
So in 2019, they established a treaty called the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, where rather than these 5 blocks doing that, right, like it's just this one block called the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which will allow Africa to trade internally. So currently, Africa trades more with Europe than it does. The volume of trade with Africa with Europe is higher than it does with itself, like you can imagine. So Kenya does more business with the EU than it does more business with Tanzania, which is its neighboring country. Like, you get the irony, right? So in the whole of Africa, it's set up like that. So with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which was ratified in 2022, meaning all African countries have agreed and they've set it up. It's based in Ghana. It's the first step for that, because in the agreement, it's also supposed to pave way for passportless Africa, right? Where I can go to any country without any visa in Africa, right? Yeah. Or use one currency to do business. Those things are currently in the beginning stages, but they are envisioned, and it's part of the 2030 African Union's 2030 vision of passportless Africa, visa-free Africa, and in the future to pave the way for a one Africa Union, right? So that's the vision. It's very promising. Things are on paper, right? People have a good vision, but in real life, things don't work as according to your plan. So as I said, with these regional bodies, every regional body and the presidents of those regional bodies, they've got alliances, they've got friends, right? So with ECOWAS, they tend to lean more to the Americans and more the Europeans, right? With the East African community, as we tend to be more pro-China, right? Because we've done work with both. We've done work with the Americans, we've done work with the Europeans, we've done work with the Chinese. We've seen good progress, good development with the Chinese. So the East African community right now, it's doing so many huge projects with China, like so many railways being made, highways, like so much trade with China, right? Because for the East Africans, we tend to be more pragmatic. Like the good thing with the East African region is we tend to maybe more follow the money, right? If you're doing business with these guys and you see things are well, you tend to stay with them. But with ECOWAS, it's more of this colonial, like what's that word? They're more anchored to their colonial masters. So even if it makes sense to do business with China or to do business with Russia, because the Americans or the Brussels says, hey man, don't do business with them, like ECOWAS tends to listen, right? And that's the problem. SADC is very independent, right? Yeah. SADC is the South African states. Then they tend to do business with everybody. They're also very prudent, as in they just do business with everyone. And with the AMU, the North African countries, then they tend to anchor themselves with the Middle East, right? They're part of the Arab League, right? So that's where they've seen their money. The Saudi oil money, the Emirates money, their development, their projects. They tend to link it with the Middle East, right? Because they speak the same language. They're in the same region, like the Middle East, right? So the AMU, something Maghreb Union. AMU means Arab Maghreb Union, right? So it's these North African countries: Tunisia, Algeria, Libya, I think was part of it, Morocco, right? So then they tend to be more in the Arab League. They tend to focus on that, right? So the political leanings tend to be more related with the Arab League, right? So if the Saudis say listen to the Americans, they listen to the Americans, right? if the Emirates say, hey, listen to the Chinese, they listen to the Chinese. So then they're not very independent. But when it comes to the East African community and the SADC, the South African community, as we tend to be more very independent. But now the problem is ECOWAS, which is still, people see it as just a colonial tool of the West. And that's why the Sahel found it fit to, instead of trying to fix it, to just leave it here. So that's a bad side with these regional unions. They're easier to manipulate based on interests, right? And some might work for the people, some might work for like the masses. And yeah. But so far, I'm very optimistic about the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, and so far things are looking positive.
Okay, wow. So just to kind of see if I understand this correctly, so we have the East African bloc, and we have the South African bloc, not South African, but the bloc of South African countries, and they are a bit more independent.
Yes.
And then we have the old Francophone Africa, as you called it, the West African part, and they have been very influenced through ECOWAS and other. But now we have a little group here that are kind of at the Sahel region. They're breaking out. And then we have the top, and they're kind of aligned to certain Arab countries.
The Middle East.
The Middle East. And then we have Central Africa, where we were talking about the Republic of Congo, and their minerals being taken. And you said they were whining a bit.
So for DRC, it is such a sad story, because whatever is happening to them has been happening to them for since the 1960s, since the Belgium left, right? DRC is a very good example of how Western policy can destroy an African country. So DRC, it's, how can I put it? DRC is technically the richest country in the world, right? It has huge oil reserves. It has huge gold reserves. It has huge lithium, huge, the DRC is so large as a country itself, right? It's larger than the United States. Like you can imagine, just that one region is larger than the whole of the United States, right? So like in landmass, and it's so blessed, right? But because it's so blessed, it's been so cursed, because if you have everything, everybody wants a piece of you, right? So in the 60s, they had this very visionary president called Patrice Lumumba, right? And he was like, okay, I'm president, I'm going to get this thing set, right? We have a potential to be very wealthy and prosperous. So because he started cancelling out, you see what Traore is doing? He started cancelling out these mining deals, right? The CIA and the Belgium and the French had him assassinated, right? And this is not like a conspiracy theory or a rumor. There's declassified documents from the CIA, how they planned it, right? How they organized his coup and had him shot, dipped in acid, right? And his remaining bones and teeth scattered, right? Yeah. And the only evidence is that we have, or that they did it, is one of the agents who did that, right? I think he was a French soldier, kept one tooth for as a souvenir, right? And even last year, recently, the DRC sued or petitioned this country to return it, which they did in a whole huge ceremony, right? So the visionary leader was assassinated, right, by the CIA, the Belgians, and the French, and they put in a puppet leader, right? And this puppet leader just kept the status quo, right? They continued looting it. The puppet leader started saying, hey, I'm not doing good to my people. He grew up conscious, right? Yeah? The West organized another coup. The French organized another coup. He got removed. Civil law ensued. War till today. They're still trying to put the country together, right? And there's so many other countries. Like currently, the situation is Rwanda is sponsoring a militia group called the MK23, right? That is causing problems in the eastern parts of Congo. Uganda is also sponsoring another militia, and this how these militias work. You'd think their goal is to go cause chaos. No, they kill the people in a certain region, right? They install their militaries, and now they start mining, and all those minerals go directly to Rwanda, go directly to Congo, to Uganda, directly to UAE, where that gold is processed and it's legitimized, right? And now countries like Belgium can go like, hey, you're buying gold from the UAE, which is legal, right? Yeah. So that's the current situation in DR Congo. So many people have died. Last time I checked, more than 23 million people have died because of this chaos, right? Yeah, like so many humans have died in DR Congo, and they've always been because it's not like a direct military where there's one face you're fighting. Everybody's just taking pieces of you, right? Because you're so big. Like you can imagine, like a good analogy, you can imagine it's like a man who has a mound of gold, right? And the only way he can do is like grab it. It's so easy for people to just take it from all directions, and that's what currently happening with DRC. Like a good example is that we covered this in the news a few years back. Apple, Dell, Tesla, and Microsoft got sued by families of in DR Congo of kids who died in mines, right? Because they were illegal mines, and those mines were taking the same cobalt, the same coltan that we use in our phones, in the Apple phones. Like those mines were the suppliers of Apple, and I think they won that case through a court settlement. And in the corporate world, multinational companies, that's the best you can get, right? A lot of court settlement, regardless if it was 50, you want 50 billion, they'll never admit guilt, right? They just be like, hey, take this money, keep quiet, right? Yeah. So these multinational companies have just been looting DR Congo like that. Yeah, DR Congo right now is how can I say it? It's an example of the worst scenario that can happen in Africa, right? So like in Africa. The opposite of DR Congo is Botswana. Yeah, Botswana is the largest diamond producer in I think in the world. Recently, they found the largest diamond ever to be found. Right. So for Botswana, their minerals, I think the government keeps a huge, significant amount. Right. The mineral wealth is directly connected to the constitution. Right, the mineral wealth directly goes to building roads, hospitals, like funding social programs. Right, yeah. Politicians don't even get that money; it directly goes to helping the people. Right, Botswana is a very stable, flourishing, African country. It's using its mineral wealth very well. Yeah. So now that's the positive. Because for me, I really don't like just doing the negative cliche stories. Right? Yeah. So it's just that different policies, right? As I said, like Africa is many countries, and every country has its story. But the story for DR Congo, it's very sad. But a good example is there's no reason why DR Congo cannot be Botswana. Yeah, which they're not. I think there's one country dividing them, right? Yeah. So they're not that far along. And the good thing with DR Congo, it recently joined the East African community, right? Last year, I think it's last year or last year, but one. It recently joined the East African community, and it has also joined the SADC region. So it's The current president is called Felix Tshisekedi, right?
Okay.
He's doing something. With a huge country, it's very hard, but he's trying to do something. He's trying to fix things. He's gone to international courts to try to tell Rwanda to stop doing what it's doing. He's called France. He's called Belgium to try to indirectly tell them, please stop sending your people to do this to our country. He's trying to do something, but still currently the way things are, you can say it's just open season in DR Congo. Everybody wants a piece of DR Congo because the future is powered with what DR Congo has, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
That's it's a sad analysis, but also, of course, hopeful.
Yeah.
Wow, Michael, we've gone through a lot.
Yeah.
I feel very privileged that you will share this with me and our listeners and watchers. I want to ask you here. We've talked about these things. We have the coups in Mali and Burkina Faso and Nigeria, and we have the things going on in the Republic of Congo. Do you think if your work and the work of other people in Africa, talking to other Africans, and do you think that could be part of, a hopeful future, that people are going to wake up to what's happening in their neighboring countries? What do you think, Harry? What are your hopes for the continent going forward, and which areas are you going to focus on with your work in the future?
Definitely. So for me, like even when 2nacheki reached 1 million subscribers, right? Like I told the community, it's cool to have 1 million subscribers, right? You get the plug, you get everything. But what as we envision is for there to be 1 million 2nachekis, right? 1 million Africans doing what we do, right? Because and the way I always tell people, you don't need fancy equipment, fancy studio things. All you need is your phone. Everybody these days has a smartphone, right? All you need is a phone, and you don't even need to report the news. Just report what you're seeing, right? So like you can imagine, if there are 1 million 2nachekis, how much? Because we've achieved this much with just one channel. If there are 1 million people, Africans, doing what 2nacheki is doing, we always go like it will further help everybody to tell their own stories, to cause changes, right? In in the regions, people to start discussing things that they never could discuss before, right? Yeah. So that has been our goal, and that's what we see the future is for us. Like we just want to focus on building more channels. So for us, if like well as our open policy, we have this program called Friends of 2nacheki, where if somebody's like, hey guys, I'm from university or I'm a banker, I want to start a YouTube channel, we give them free promotion. We don't charge them anything to promote their channels. We give them free training. We give them the tips of tricks of starting a YouTube channel. We just help, and like you're a YouTuber and you know how hard it is to break out in the mold of YouTube, right? To start getting an audience, a community. Yeah. So as we for free, we never charged anybody, and We've made channels have over 100,000 subscribers, 300,000 subscribers, many in the 10,000 subscribers, right? So that has always been our goal. Maybe to take it back, like when I was young, I joined the UN because, like, based on what you see on the TV, you thought people would go to the UN to change the world, right? That's how, laws are made as in if there's, change the world. But after being there for 4 years, I just saw the job of the UN is to keep the status quo, right? Yeah, the job of the UN is to keep the way the things are. America does this, Russia does that, China does this. The Security Council is just basically the status quo. Nothing gets done, nothing gets changed, nothing is achieved, right? Throughout the history of the UN, if you look at it, they've achieved nothing. They've not managed to stop any genocide, right? From like Sarajevo to the Rwanda genocide to right now the Gaza genocide, right? They've not managed to stop any genocide, right? Any at all. So my main goal was to, I was like, oh man, I just want to change the world. And I quit the UN cause. I was like, this is not the place to do it, right? And with social media, I saw like, hey, you can actually do things yourself, right? And my goal is the same. Like since I was 18, it's to just do something to change the world, right? To change the status quo, the way things are, because the people on top, like the EU, the United States, China, Russia, right? They love the status quo, right? It's always good when you sit pretty on top, right? Yeah, yeah. So my goal is just to change the status quo and help other people, because of course, I'm not like a narcissist or megalomaniac. I don't think like, I've got the answer, I can save the world, right? No. I know we'll need millions, even more than millions of people doing what we are doing, what you're doing, right? Yeah, what other creators are doing to change the world. Recently, I saw this interview of Hillary Clinton where she was saying they've lost with social media, they've lost the narrative, right? The chicken is out of the coop, and they need to bring it back in, right? They've like with every invention, like a good example, the internet. Yeah, nobody could have foreseen the rise of social media and how it will change media, right? Yeah. So these guys have started to see, hold on, wait a minute, this thing is dangerous to us. And now they've started trying to censor it. Because think about it, based on what we were told about how the world works, it was Russia, China, who were the countries that censor people who, if you say something bad about the government, or if you say something they don't like, regardless if it's true or if it's false, let people decide, right? Yeah. Like it was those countries where they used to censor you, take you to jail, like Julian Assange, right? Yeah, take you to jail with put plant fake evidence, take you to jail. Like we were lied to. It's China and Russia that do that, right? Like that was the narrative. Oh, the Americans, they never do things like that. They're, democracy, freedom, right? But based on how things are going right now, if you could say media freedom, right? Like Israel has killed more journalists, I think, than the whole, like I think more journalists have died, like in the past 2 years than the whole of the time where World War II ended till 2023. Like you can imagine how crazy that is, right? Yeah. So if you're told the only democracy in the Middle East is responsible for killing like more than 200 journalists, I think right now the count is 271 journalists, and that's the country where the whole of EU, the whole of the Americas are giving the tax money to, so that they preserve democracy, and that's the what we are told democracy is. Yeah. So yeah. Things really need to change, because the story we've been told throughout the years that the West are the good guys. They are like, if it's not for them, Russia would nuke everybody. If it's not for them, China would come and like I don't know what they say with China, sell everybody fake stuff, right? Fake made in Chinese stuff, right? Yeah. So that with media, it was easy to, with traditional media, it was easy to tell people that lie. But when you see things, the policy of China, if you see the type of things Russia is doing in Africa, it's opposite of what we've been scared of. You get, right? Like a good example is this debt trap. Oh, China will debt trap you. The World Bank telling us China will debt trap you. The World Bank gives Japan loans with interest rates of 3%. It gives African countries interest rates with loans of like I think 70%, right? So who's here to debt trap who? You know, China last month, I think they announced they are going to cancel all tariffs with Africa, right? So any business that goes on between China and Africa, tariff-free. The EU recently put a 33% tariff on China. Recently, the United States put a 100% tariff on electric cars coming from China, right? So like you get the people, the things they're telling us, these Chinese people and these Russian people will do to us, it's actually the West that are doing. You know, the atrocities that they're telling us the Iranians, the Chinese, the Russians will do are actually the Western countries that are doing the atrocities, right? Things like sponsoring terrorist groups. We recently, like I think even yesterday, and this one is confirmed. You know, like I like to distinguish between when we are talking, right? And when I say it's actually confirmed, like Ukraine funded Al-Qaeda to attack and kill Malians, right? How crazy is that?
Where is that confirmed?
Like it was confirmed. So like you can Google it, but the reason it was confirmed, the the ambassador for Ukraine in Mali started flossing about it because they didn't know, like when the attack happened, they attacked some Russian military, like Wagner forces, right? So it killed, I think, 23 Russian Wagner forces, but
Al-Qaeda did.
Al-Qaeda did the attack. It killed the Russian people in Mali, right? I think 23. But before they knew the extent of the damage, which also killed 121 Malian soldiers, right? He started flossing that, hey, our attack in the way Ukraine is right now, they're so desperate, they take every small win, right? So he started celebrating how that attack killed so many Russians in Mali, right? But that was before he learned the attack also killed Malian soldiers, right? Which is against the law, like so many UN laws. Like you can't be a foreign country funding terrorists to kill military personnel in another country, right? So this was confirmed.
But is that proof that they paid for it just because he talked about it?
Okay, like when I mean proof, like he admitted it, how can I say, like it's the most proof we'll get, like how this Israeli guys, this is like Benjamin Netanyahu admits doing something, right? Like even in the criminal in the ICJ hearings where the South Africans were saying that when he said it's time to, there's a statement he said, it's time to cleanse the what, right? And the South Africans accused him of ethnic cleansing, calling out ethnic cleansing, right? But Netanyahu was like, oh, it's just talk, symbolism, like that, right? So if you can be taken to court for something like that, admitting that you funded an attack with terrorists, I think that also goes to prove that you
okay,
did.
So he admitted. Okay. I think I have to see.
Yeah. And there's even a video of the call, because it was a call. So yeah, there's even a video of the call. Yeah. So
if that's true, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, like it is. And even the foreign minister, we did an interview for the foreign minister yesterday saying how blatant attacks like that, as in just goes to show how things are getting out of control, right? So we like they tell us it's the and there are also so many rumors of this France being behind. like I think this was proven by the Niger or Malian government, that when when Niger had their coup, right? France released a lot of militants in a prison, right? Like France, they had a lot of terrorists in a prison that they were managing, but those terrorists apparently escaped, right? And they've been causing havoc in the region, right? They escaped and they stole a lot of weapons, right? So there are these gray areas where you cannot point the finger who's funding these terrorists, right? Yeah, but there are talks that France also is funding these terrorists in the Sahel region.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to get accurate reporting because but there's nobody to get the information out.
But the good thing is, even the reason I can say this thing is that I'm getting them from the actual officials in Niger, actual officials in Mali, right? I cannot say Ukraine funded Al Qaeda if the Prime Minister of Mali has not said Ukraine funded Al Qaeda, to kill our soldiers. Yeah. So all these are the statements from official personnel in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. The one for France supporting Al Qaeda, the one for the attack Ukraine was supposed to have sponsored.
Okay. Yeah. But right now there's kind of a media war going on because isn't it true that, for example, in Burkina Faso, was it Burkina Faso where they're closing off certain Western media for propaganda?
Yeah. So
there is a battle going on.
Yes,
at the same time.
Definitely.
I'm not saying what you're saying isn't true. I'm just saying it's hard to say exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah. But I hear what you're saying. But that's also, is there a chance that countries like China and Russia, like right now, they can see, okay, we can give certain African countries a better deal. Mm-hmm. But does that mean that they have good intentions?
Now you say.
Do you know what I mean? Like, could it be that they're just trying to get the minerals? I'm asking you. I don't know. But
it's like it's always a question. As in, are we jumping from the pot into the fire? Are we getting away from one type of exploitation just to go to another type of exploitation? Right. So for us, I think the current consensus is that trust but verify. Right? With these deals, these days there's so much scrutiny. Long ago when governments were making these deals, a good example is I'll give for Kenya, right? Yeah. Long ago when governments used to make these deals, they used to be done in back rooms, and people get their cuts, right? Yeah, but these days things are a bit not as easy for them. Things they have to go through the people's consensus. So a good example is in Kenya, the government had a deal with Adani. Adani is India's richest man, right? Okay. He has a huge group called the Adani Group, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so he is a conglomerate constructor. So they had a deal so that the Adani Group will come and buy our airport and modernize it, right? So it can be an international hub, right? In the likes of Heathrow, the likes of Atlanta, like the likes of Dubai or Singapore, right? Like it looked good in paper, yeah. Very like, oh man, Nairobi is going to be the hub of, like how they market things, right? But people were like, hey, this is too good to be true. And they looked into the contract and right now, this deal is being scrutinized by the High Court of the country. It's being scrutinized by the parliament, where certain politicians, they would have gotten cuts, where things that were promised were never meant to be. Right? So these days people are more vigilant, and it's easy for people to organize and come together and avoid these things from happening, right? So let's say if Kenya and China like have a deal of like, let's say maybe a mining concession, right? Before, things used to happen if the people wanted or not, but these days it's very, very hard. So based on your question, there's a risk, but it will be very hard for things to happen like they happened before, because people are way more aware these days, extremely aware. Like even a bit too touchy, if I would say. Yeah, they're a bit too reactionary. A deal has to be perfect for it to go without scrutiny.
Yeah. Well, I hope they're gonna have people like you keeping an eye on exactly what will be happening.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Michael, I'd like to say thank you so much for your time and your information. Yes. I really appreciate you sharing this and informing us about all these different perspectives of the Pan-African experience, or from your perspective. And so thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's been fun conversating with you, and and I'll definitely share this video and your channel to our community, so even Africans can learn about what's going on in Denmark and the EU and the perception.
Yeah, thank you. I hope we can talk again sometime.
Yeah, okay. So,